I've always loved hunting for unique vintage finds, so I was thrilled to spot an ornate antique jewelry box on Craigslist. The elaborately carved box looked so elegant in the photos, I just had to have it. But once I brought it home, I discovered a strange talisman hidden inside that seemed to unleash evil forces. That seemingly innocent online purchase turned into a chilling nightmare. I've been browsing Craigslist weekly in hopes of scoring cool retro treasures on the cheap. Mid-century dishware, 70s shirts, or funky decor. I love giving old stuff new life. So when that jewelry box popped up, my curiosity was instantly piqued. The listing said the box was hand-carved from oak in Eastern Europe sometime in the 1800s. It had beautiful floral motifs and a cool hexagonal shape. The seller was only asking $50 since the hinges were a bit creaky. I figured that was a steal for such a unique antique in otherwise great shape. I messaged the seller immediately and arranged to pick it up that weekend. She was an elderly woman who said the box had been collecting dust in her attic for decades. Her husband traveled a lot before he passed and must have picked it up somewhere overseas. The woman seemed thrilled when I expressed interest in the box and its origins. She said she had been hoping someone would come along who could restore it to its former glory. I happily handed over the cash and headed home with the box safely wrapped up in a blanket. After a thorough cleaning, I carefully examined every nook and cranny of my new treasure. That's when I noticed a hidden compartment built into the bottom. My excitement grew as I slid open the false panel to reveal something totally unexpected. Sitting inside was an ancient-looking talisman on a worn leather cord. It seemed to be carved from some blackened bone and bore cryptic symbols I couldn't identify. The thing gave off heavy occult vibes. Definitely not your typical jewelry box trinket. Against my better instincts, I put the cord over my head to get a closer look at the weird talisman. The symbols almost appeared to glow as I studied them. I planned to hop online later to research their meaning. Yet as soon as the talisman touched my chest, an ominous dread seemed to wash over the room. The temperature dropped to an icy chill and the shadows deepened in the corners. It sounds crazy, but I could have sworn the cratings warped into grotesque faces glaring at me. I quickly stashed the necklace away, shook off my unease, and headed to bed. But that night I had vivid, terrifying nightmares of being stalked through the darkness by snarling beasts with cold red eyes. When I woke up drenched in a cold sweat, I realized there was definitely something sinister about the talisman. I planned to return it to the old woman in the light of day, but suddenly I felt compelled to put on the necklace again instead. The moment I did, all my worries melted away and were replaced by an eerie calm. I no longer cared about the increasingly frightening things happening since bringing the jewelry box home. The talisman seemed to exert an intoxicating influence over me whenever I wore it. Over the coming weeks, I became completely withdrawn and obsessed with the cursed object. I stopped contacting friends and family and barely left the house. Most of my time was spent admiring the strange black talisman. Soon, disturbing apparitions began materializing in mirrors and shadows, seeming to follow me wherever I went. At night, ghastly whispers and shrieks echoed from the jewelry box, though it remained innocently closed. I knew deep down some malevolent force had awoken in my home. Whether through the power of the talisman or the box's own long history, I had foolishly unleashed real evil merely by purchasing a curiosity online. Desperate to free myself from the escalating nightmare, I decided I had to destroy the sinister talisman. As soon as I removed it and grabbed the hammer, the temperature plunged even more severely. Unnatural growls resonated from all around as I shattered the thing into powder. Immediately, it felt like a heavy veil had lifted from the room. The oppressive darkness retreated back into the corners. I shoved the cursed jewelry box in my closet, hoping to contain whatever lingered within. Maybe someday I'll work up the courage to figure out where the box came from and how to properly dispose of it. For now, it stays locked away while I try to forget the chilling events I stirred up. I'd been hunting for a cheap used car on Craigslist for weeks. My budget was tight, so I jumped at the chance when I found an old set-in listed for only $900. Little did I know the sketchy history tied to that car and the deadly secret stashed inside would turn my bargain buy into a chilling nightmare. As a broke college student, I desperately needed a car but couldn't afford much. I was scrolling through endless Craigslist ads when I spotted a 1990 beige sedan with only 85,000 miles on it. Miraculously, the seller was only asking $900 due to some minor cosmetic issues. I fired off a message asking if I could come check it out that day. The seller, a guy named Mike, quickly agreed and said he just wanted to get rid of the old car fast. With dollar signs in my eyes, I drove out to Mike's place, cash in hand. The sedan actually looked way better than the photos suggested. Sure, the paint was faded and it had a few dents, but the interior was spotless and it drove smooth as butter during our test drive. I happily forked over the cash right then and there. As I drove my new clunker home, I became curious about the lump under the passenger seat. Popping off the lid revealed a nondescript shoebox. Figuring it held spare fuses or something, I pried open the lid. But what I found inside made my blood run cold. Nestled inside the box was a loaded handgun and several boxes of ammo. No registration. No explanation why it would be stashed in the car. Seeing that weapon sitting inches from where I'd been driving was utterly chilling. In a panic, I pulled into a grocery store parking lot to get the gun out of my car. But what was I supposed to do with it? Take it to the police and try to explain? They'd never believe I just happened to find it there. It had to be related to some crime or drugs or who knows what. I didn't know a thing about Mike aside from his vague Craigslist ad. What if the car was some kind of getaway vehicle and he'd forgotten the incriminating shoebox? Having any tie to the gun could potentially link me to real dangerous people. Freaking out and paranoid, I tossed the terrifying discovery into the nearest dumpster. Probably not the smartest move, but I couldn't think straight with the swarm of nightmare scenarios running through my mind. For weeks afterwards, I was a nervous wreck driving that sedan around, just waiting to be pulled over and questioned about its shady past. Had it been used for robberies? As some gang's bride? A hitman's work vehicle? The not knowing haunted me. I decided to run the VIN to hopefully ease my mind. But what I uncovered only made things worse. Turns out the car had been impounded a year prior in connection to a local shooting. Mike had bought it as a seized vehicle from a police auction. Knowing the sedan had undoubtedly been involved in violent crimes ratcheted my anxiety to new heights. Whoever stashed that gun must have intended to retrieve it someday. I could practically feel the target on my back growing larger each day. Despite my friends telling me I was being paranoid, I just couldn't shake the uneasy feeling clinging to me along with that car. Its sordid history and the chilling shoebox discovery felt like omens warning me away. So barely a month after buying it, I resold the sedan on Craigslist as mysteriously as I found it. I even ate the loss on what I originally paid rather than keep driving the infamous vehicle another day. Maybe I jumped the gun getting rid of it over my, admittedly irrational fears. But honestly, the relief I felt after watching it drive away and getting something untainted put my mind at ease. I'm just glad I uncovered that illicit shoebox alone, rather than with a cop peering over my shoulder during a routine stop. Something tells me I narrowly dodged a bullet, quite literally. Selling stuff on Craigslist always feels like a gamble, but I never expected someone to outright steal my bike during a supposed test ride. The guy seemed totally normal at first when he came to check out my secondhand mountain bike. But the encounter quickly turned freaky when he pedaled away and vanished into thin air, never to be seen again. I'd posted the bike for $175, which I thought was plenty fair for a used set of wheels in great shape. The bike was only a year old and had barely been ridden, so it still looked brand new. I included some good pics in the ad and figured it would sell quickly. A youngish guy named Jeff reached out just a few hours after I posted the ad. He asked if he could swing by that evening to take the bike for a quick test ride. I said sure, as long as he let some ID as collateral, which is pretty standard. Right on time, Jeff pulled up that night and we wheeled the bike out. He was normal enough. Casual small talk about biking around town and commuting to work. I felt totally at ease as I watched him circle my block a few times. But when 5 minutes stretched to 10, I started feeling antsy. Still, I figured he was just being thorough and making sure the gears shifted smoothly. Another 5 minutes passed, then 10 more. No sign of Jeff. I began pacing nervously, debating if I should call the police. After a half hour, I finally decided to report the theft. The cops didn't seem too confident about tracking down some random guy named Jeff, who now had a 30-minute head start. Nonetheless, I gave them all the details: the fake ID he'd left, his phone number, our messaging history, anything that could help get my bike back. Deep down, though, I knew the chances were slim. Jeff had pulled a vanishing act. Over the next few weeks, the police hit dead end after dead end trying to identify the perpetrator. Jeff's number went straight to a disconnected voicemail. The address on his ID was fake. Even the name turned up no records. It was like chasing a ghost. With all leads dried up, the cops had no choice but to drop the investigation. In their eyes, it was just another minor Craigslist scam, barely worth the effort to keep digging. But for me, it felt like a violation. That deceitful trickster was still out there enjoying my bike. I drove all around town, constantly scanning bike racks and trails, hoping to spot that dirtbag. But I never caught a single glimpse of my stolen wheels. He must have ridden it to some nearby city and pawned it off immediately. For months afterwards, I was obsessed with getting justice. I knew chances were slim, but something about letting that weasel get away with it didn't sit right with me at all. It was the deception that really stung. I thought I was just helping a fellow rider test out a sweet new ride. Finally, I had to force myself to move on for my own sanity's sake. As the police said, Craigslist is teemed with scammers, and my case was far from unique. But I learned the hard way to never trust someone who seems eager to ride or drive an item away alone. Not without checking ID, collateral, everything. Jeff picked me because I was silly enough to give a stranger the benefit of the doubt based on a fake nice guy act. Getting my bike back was always a long shot, but at least my cautionary tale can help protect other sellers from being conned by phantom test riders prowling Craigslist. I won't make the same mistake twice.